They touched your energy, and they thought they could walk away unchanged. But chosen one, what they didn't know is that your energy doesn't just sit quietly. It echoes, it lingers, it activates. And for those who dared to tamper with it without reverence, it now keeps them up at night, eyes wide open, heart pounding, caught in a silent war they never expected. This isn't superstition. This is spiritual law. You see, your energy isn't just light, it's coded. It carries the frequency of your assignment, your trials, your pain, your ascension, and your protection. When someone steps into your field with ill intentions, they don't just encounter you. They encounter the divine force backing you. And that force, it doesn't take kindly to trespassers. Some people were drawn to your glow, not because they respected you, but because they thought they could siphon what you carry. They believed they could imitate, mock, use, betray, and walk away untouched. But what they touched wasn't you. It was what moves through you. And that power is holy. That power is jealous. That power doesn't forget. Chosen one. Have you ever wondered why certain people from your past just fell off? Why you'd hear they were fine, and then suddenly, their life was unraveling. You didn't wish them harm. You moved on in peace. But something happened after they left. Something haunted them. And it wasn't you seeking revenge. It was their own soul remembering what it violated. Because your energy marks them, understand this, you were never just a person to them. Even if they laughed at you, mocked your beliefs, questioned your sensitivity, or dismissed your gifts, something inside them knew. Something ancient. Something spiritual. They felt it when they touched your skin, when they locked eyes with you, when they stood close and couldn't explain the chills on their spine. It was truth. It was judgment. It was divine presence. You carry an energy that stirs what's buried. Some were drawn to you because they were starving for light. Others came closer out of curiosity, not realizing how dangerous it is to play with sacred flame. And for some, it was envy. They saw something they didn't understand, so they tried to control it, manipulate it, extinguish it. But in doing so, they ended up branding themselves with the very fire they tried to dim. And now they can't sleep. Sleep is where the spirit does its deepest work. It's when the body is still and the soul becomes loud. And for them, that's the problem. Because the moment their head hits the pillow, the silence rushes in, and with it, regret, fear, visions. You appear in dreams, not as a threat, but as a reminder of what they mishandled, a reminder of what they tried to destroy but couldn't. It wasn't always physical touch. Sometimes it was energy exchanged through words, through gossip, manipulation, lies. Sometimes it was through fake love, false friendships, spiritual masks worn to get close to you. But regardless of the method, the outcome is the same. They touched your energy, and now it echoes inside them like a bell they can't unring. Some of them are waking up at 3 a.m, heart racing, gasping for breath. Some are having vivid dreams that make them sweat through the sheets. Some are hearing whispers in the dark, voices calling them to face the truth. And some are simply restless, unable to find peace, unable to escape that gnawing feeling that something isn't right. Because the thing is, you weren't meant to be handled casually. You weren't meant to be touched by hands that weren't clean. You are sacred territory. And when someone crosses that line without spiritual permission, they don't just answer to you. They answer to the divine. That's why your presence is heavy. That's why your departure is louder than your presence ever was. People don't realize how strong your covering is until they feel the storm that follows their betrayal. It's not that you wish them harm. It's that your energy, once violated, becomes a witness against them. They didn't know you were anointed. They didn't see the oil on your life. They didn't respect the cost of your calling. And now they can't sleep at night. Not because you hex them or curse them, but because divine justice keeps receipts. And heaven doesn't let chosen ones be mishandled without consequence. Chosen one, I need you to understand this deeply. You are not crazy. You're not paranoid. You felt that shift in the spirit. You felt something break when they touched you the wrong way, when they crossed that boundary, when they invaded your space, when they betrayed your trust. And what you felt wasn't fear. It was warning. It was the Spirit saying, they don't know who they're dealing with. You don't have to retaliate. You don't have to prove anything. Your silence is a sword. Your absence is a courtroom. Your healing is a testimony. Let the divine handle what your hands were never meant to carry. Because the same people who once slept peacefully after hurting others can no longer close their eyes without facing what they did to you. You were never just another connection. You were a test. You were a chance. You were a mirror. And for those who failed to see your worth, those who violated your trust, drained your energy, disrespected your essence, they now live in the aftermath of touching something they never had permission to touch. Sleep doesn't come easy when the soul is out of alignment. And for them, every night is a reckoning. Now let's go deeper. Chosen one. Because what they touched wasn't just your physical presence, it was your frequency, your divine resonance. And here's the truth. Most can't grasp touching the energy of a chosen one. Without alignment is like trying to hold lightning with bare hands. It doesn't matter how clever, how manipulative, or how charming they think they are. The energy answers to spiritual law, not human ego. There's something called a spiritual backlash. And when someone mishandles an anointed vessel, it sends out shock waves in the spirit realm. These waves don't just disappear. They hit resistance. They strike back. And for those who cross the line, those waves show up as anxiety, insomnia, confusion, misfortune, or that eerie sense that they're being watched even when no one's around. You weren't just kind. You were divinely positioned, and your kindness was a test of their character. But instead of receiving you with honor, they treated you like a resource. They fed on your light and dismissed the cost it took for you to carry it. They thought your peace was naivete. They mistook your discernment for weakness. And now, the very energy they tried to consume has turned on them. That's why their life feels off balance now. Why the things they once relied on no longer bring peace. Why their relationships feel shallow, their accomplishments empty. Because something shifted when they touched your energy without reverence. They activated a spiritual alarm, and now it echoes in their life like a bell that won't stop ringing. And you might have felt that draining sensation at first. That weight, that inexplicable exhaustion after being around them. Maybe it was someone you loved. Maybe it was someone you trusted. But after their departure, or even before, it felt like something was leeching off you. Like your very soul was under silent assault. But here's the revelation: what they took wasn't theirs to keep. And your spirit knew it. That's why, even in your sleep, your higher self began reclaiming what was stolen. Bit by bit, your light began pulling itself back from the places it didn't belong. And for them, that's when the torment began. People don't realize that your energy is consecrated. It's tied to a mission, a lineage, a calling that predates this lifetime. When someone violates that energy, whether through betrayal, manipulation, or spiritual envy, they aren't just playing with emotions. They're interfering with purpose. And the consequences are spiritual first, then physical. That's why some of them wake up in cold sweats, chased by dreams they can't explain. That's why they hear your voice in their head, feel your name vibrating through their spirit like a warning they can't escape. And no, you didn't curse them. But your spirit is doing what it was designed to do: stand as a witness, a divine witness. And that presence alone is enough to disturb their illusions. Imagine, for a moment, someone standing before a sacred altar and spitting on it just to test if anything would happen. And at first, nothing might. But over time, their life begins to unravel. Little things go wrong. Peace becomes scarce. Sleep becomes war. And slowly, they begin to realize they touched something sacred. And now it's too late to pretend it didn't happen. Chosen one. Some of them tried to replace you after they discarded you. They went out seeking other sources of light, other people they could leech from. But it never worked. Because your energy wasn't just beautiful, it was specific. Custom designed for their healing, their growth, their correction. And in rejecting it, they didn't just lose you. They lost a lifeline. That's why their souls are restless. Because the divine doesn't just send you into people's lives for company. You're a catalyst. You're an answer to a prayer they may have whispered years ago in the dark. But when the answer came wrapped in your human form, flawed, radiant, humble, they overlooked it. And now they can't rest, because deep down, they know they mishandled a miracle. Let's go back to ancient truth for a moment. Think of the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred vessel that held divine presence in the Old Testament. It was so holy that even those assigned to carry it had to follow strict instructions. And anyone who touched it the wrong way, even with good intentions, was struck down. Why? Because proximity to the divine requires alignment, reverence, humility. You, chosen one, are like that ark. Not because you're untouchable in the worldly sense, but because what you carry is consecrated. And when people draw near without clean hands or pure motives, they're stepping into spiritual danger they can't see. And the first sign that something's gone wrong, their peace evaporates. You might be miles away now. No contact. No words exchanged. But they feel it. The dissonance. The unresolved tension. The weight of your energy echoing through their spirit like a hymn they tried to silence. And for many, it's unbearable. So they toss and turn. They wake up tired. They avoid stillness. They turn up the noise. But nothing works. Because once your spirit has made contact with theirs, the imprint remains. Not as a curse, but as a call to repentance, to humility, to truth. And here's the kicker. Chosen one. This isn't even about revenge. You've moved on. You're healing. You're elevating. But your energy, it's still doing its work. Because divine energy is not time-bound. It lingers. It teaches. It convicts. And for those who touched it with defiled intentions, it becomes a fire that purifies or burns. That's why they can't sleep at night. Chosen one. You need to understand something fundamental about your presence. Something the world often tries to convince you to downplay. Your aura is not a mask. It's not a performance. It's not something you turn on or off, depending on who's watching. Your aura is a mirror. It reflects what's inside others, whether they like it or not. And that's where the unease begins. When people encounter you, they're not just meeting a personality, they're facing a revelation. Your presence has a way of pulling the truth to the surface. It doesn't matter how well someone's pretending or how many walls they've built to hide their pain, their envy, their shame. Your energy reveals it. You don't have to say a word. Just standing near you can feel like standing in front of a spiritual X-ray machine. You might have noticed how people suddenly get uncomfortable around you for no apparent reason. They shift, avoid eye contact, grow silent, or even become strangely defensive. It's not you, it's what you reveal. Your light exposes their shadows. Your truth confronts their illusions. Your calm unsettles their chaos. You didn't choose this effect. It's simply who you are when your soul is in alignment. And here's the thing. Many of them thought they could hide from themselves. They built entire identities on masks, roles, and performances. But when they touched your energy, those masks began to crack. Because you carry an anointing that demands authenticity, not just from yourself, but from everyone around you. And that's a tall order for those still living in denial. When someone touches your energy, they are confronted with two possibilities: growth or resistance. Those who are willing to evolve might initially feel uncomfortable, but eventually they soften, they listen, they change. But those who refuse to grow, they react. They lash out. Or worse, they try to discredit you, mock you, or minimize your impact because they don't know what else to do with the reflection you cast. This is why some people treated you like a threat, even when all you offered was love. Why they grew cold after your kindness. Why they distanced themselves after you showed loyalty. It doesn't make sense on the surface, but spiritually it's textbook. They were never angry at you. They were angry at what they saw in themselves when they stood next to you. And it doesn't just end with emotions. This reflection reaches deep into their spirit. Some of them started having intense dreams after being around you. Night visions of loss, of truth, of judgment. Others became restless, unable to enjoy the same habits, relationships, or behaviors they once did. Your energy challenged their comfort zone, and the discomfort didn't leave when you did, because the imprint of your presence isn't physical, it's energetic. You may have walked out of their life, but your essence remained, echoing through the corridors of their soul like a question they can't unhear. Why did I treat them that way, or what did I just walk away from? These aren't simple regrets. These are soul-level recognitions, and they sting the most in the stillness of night. They can run from accountability in the daylight. They can distract themselves with noise, with people, with ego. But at night, when it's just them and their conscience, that's when the truth roars. That's when your image returns, not to haunt, but to confront. To say, look again, this was divine, and you touched it with dirty hands. Chosen one, You were the mirror they couldn't shatter. And that's why they can't sleep. It reminds me of a familiar story, one you probably know, but from a new angle. Think about the story of Jesus and the rich young ruler. The young man came eager, curious, and excited to speak with the Messiah. But when Jesus asked him to give up what he loved most, his wealth, he walked away, grieved. Not because Jesus cursed him, not because he was punished, but because he saw himself clearly for the first time and didn't like what he saw. That's what happens when people meet someone who radiates divine clarity. They are offered a choice, but that choice comes with a cost: self-examination, humility, surrender, and not everyone is ready for that. So they leave, but they don't forget. That man couldn't unhear the words, couldn't unfeel the moment. The same way those who touched your energy can't unsee what they saw in your mirror. And for many, that inner dissonance shows up as sleepless nights. They toss and turn because their soul is wrestling with the truth your presence revealed. This is why you often feel misunderstood. Why people say, "You're too intense," or "You think too much," or "You're too sensitive." It's not that you're too much, it's that you're too real. And in a world addicted to illusions, realness is terrifying. So instead of facing what your energy uncovers, they label you as the problem. But hear this, you are not the problem. You are the revealer, the light bearer, the divine mirror. And yes, sometimes that makes you the scapegoat. But never forget, your reflection is a gift, even if it hurts, even if they resist it. Because some of them will remember your energy years from now, long after the chaos they created has passed. They'll remember how your presence made them feel not small, but seen, not judged, but exposed in a way they couldn't ignore. And the more they ignored it then, the more it haunts them now. Because spiritual growth doesn't wait forever. And your energy was a divine invitation to evolve. They declined it. And now their sleep is filled with what could have been. So hold your head high, chosen one. You didn't curse them. You reflected them. And the reflection still speaks. There's a law, chosen one, a law older than language, deeper than culture, and etched into the very bones of creation. It's the law of spiritual consequence. And it does not bend for ego, intention, or ignorance. It moves in alignment with divine justice. When someone touches you, your energy, your heart, your spirit without honor or discernment, they set this law in motion. You see, your life isn't random. You are divinely positioned. The path you've walked, the pain you've endured, the resilience you've cultivated, none of it was accidental. It all poured into your energy field, infusing you with a frequency that heaven recognizes. When someone crosses you, they don't just cross a person, they trespass sacred ground. And the spiritual realm responds accordingly. It doesn't always show up in thunderclaps or dramatic downfall. Sometimes it's subtle, quiet, a slow unraveling. Peace becomes elusive. Relationships fall into disarray. Doors begin to close. Night becomes long and restless. Not because you lifted a finger, but because what they touched demanded reverence. And they treated it like common soil. That's the danger in underestimating a chosen one. You've been underestimated your whole life. Haven't you? Passed over, misread, taken for granted. But what they didn't see was the weight you carry. The years you spent in spiritual training, the tears you shed in silence, the nights you cried out for purpose. They didn't know you were forged in fire, that every scar in your soul had been kissed by God and turned into oil, that your presence wasn't a coincidence, it was a divine appointment. So when they mishandled you, lied, used, betrayed, gossiped, or manipulated, they weren't just playing games. They were violating a covenant. And in the spirit, that carries weight. There's a reason the ancient prophets warned against touching the anointed. Not because the anointed would retaliate, but because heaven doesn't take such actions lightly. The very laws that hold up creation begin to shift when someone brings harm to a soul carrying divine light. Think about that. You're not just protected by people, you're protected by principle. Some of them felt it immediately. The guilt, the shame, the sickening realization that they touched something too sacred for their level of awareness. But many didn't feel it until later. Until the sleepless nights began. Until their spirit could no longer silence the echo of your absence. Until life stopped moving in the direction they expected. That's not karma in a casual sense. That's divine rebalancing. When you give your love, your energy, your truth, it's like pouring gold into someone's cup. If they honor it, the gold multiplies. It heals, it elevates. But if they spit into that cup and toss it aside, they don't just lose what you gave. They curse their own well. Their life becomes spiritually dry, and they don't understand why. They don't connect it back to you. But their spirit knows. Their soul remembers. There's a hidden cost to betraying a chosen one. That cost shows up in the form of dreams they can't shake. In the faces of new connections that never feel quite right. In the silence of midnight when they're left alone with the weight of what they did. You've heard the phrase haunted by your past, but this is different. They're haunted by your energy. Not because you're clinging, but because their soul can't digest what they've done. This is spiritual indigestion of the highest kind. Their actions were out of alignment, and now their body, their mind, and their sleep patterns are suffering the backlash. And let's be clear, this isn't about punishment. It's about restoration, correction, realignment. God isn't trying to destroy them. But the law is the law. When someone curses what God has blessed, they curse themselves. When someone tries to dismantle what heaven has constructed, they face spiritual consequence. And you, chosen one, were the embodiment of a divine blueprint. They tampered with the plans, and now their foundation is shaking. The universe does not let that slide. Sometimes the most painful lesson someone can learn is realizing that their actions had deeper consequences than they ever imagined. That the person they disrespected wasn't just another connection, but a vessel of divine assignment. That their betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was energetic treason. That's a heavy word. I know, but it's accurate. Because what they did wasn't just a personal offense, it was a spiritual violation. They trespassed without permission, touched your energy without purity, and then expected peace to follow them. But peace does not follow the violator of sacred boundaries. It evades them. This is why they're struggling now, why they're restless, why things that once brought them joy now feel empty. Your energy wasn't just comforting, it was stabilizing. And once removed, their spiritual structure began to collapse in on itself. And the worst part, they don't even know how to fix it, because the remedy isn't external. It's spiritual repentance, not groveling, not begging for your return, but genuine internal reckoning with what they did. And why? Some of them will never reach that point. They'll stay stuck in cycles of denial, blaming others, avoiding silence, running from their own reflection. But others might awaken. And when they do, they'll remember you not just as someone they lost, but as a divine encounter they failed to honor. You weren't sent to hurt them. You were sent to heal them. But healing requires participation. And when they refused to meet you in truth, the opportunity closed. So now they lie awake, staring at ceilings, haunted by visions, replaying memories, feeling something they can't explain, pressing on their chest. That pressure, it's the weight of spiritual consequence. It's the law settling the scales. And you, chosen one, you're still rising. There's something haunting about the night. Isn't there for most? It's a time of rest, of slowing down, of recovery. But for those who touched your energy without permission, the night has become something else entirely. A battleground, a courtroom, a mirror they can't escape. And that's why they can't sleep. Chosen one, because nightfall doesn't lie. See, when the sun goes down and the distractions fade, all that's left is the soul. And the soul remembers. It remembers everything: the manipulation, the dishonor, the silent envy they hid behind fake smiles. And your energy, it lingers. It doesn't fade when the relationship ends or when the door closes. Your energy shows up in the spirit realm, speaking truth that their lips would never confess. That's why their sleep is fractured, their dreams chaotic, their rest unsettled. Some of them even fear going to bed, though they'd never say it out loud. Because when they close their eyes, they open a door to the realm they tried to deny. A realm where intentions are visible and consequences unfold without filters or escape. And let's be honest, this torment isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, creeping in slowly like a fog. Restlessness that grows over time, shadows in their peripheral vision, the feeling of being watched, unexplainable heaviness on their chest at night. These aren't just symptoms of guilt. They're spiritual symptoms of imbalance, of having violated a sacred frequency and now being pursued by the echoes of what they've done. The spiritual world doesn't play favorites. It responds to vibration. And when someone sows deceit, disrespect, or betrayal into a chosen one's life, they reap the frequency of that choice. It reverberates through their field. It contaminates their peace. It clouds their dreams. And no amount of sleep aids, distractions, or therapy can wash away what was done in the spirit. This is why so many of them search for new sources of peace, trying to replace what they lost when they mishandled you. But nothing works. Because what they had with you wasn't manufactured, it was ordained. You were a divine appointment, a spiritual key. And when they violated that space, they didn't just lose a connection, they lost alignment. Now the night reminds them, every time they lay their head down and try to rest, something stirs. Maybe it's a memory of something they said to you that they shouldn't have. Maybe it's a realization that they saw the signs and still chose to hurt you. Or maybe it's just your name, echoing in their thoughts like a bell that won't stop ringing. And the dreams. Oh, the dreams. Some of them are being visited in ways they won't dare admit. Visions of you, not angry, but glowing, elevated, untouchable. Visions of you walking in peace while they're frozen in place. Dreams where they reach out for you but can't touch you. These aren't nightmares. They're revelations. They're glimpses of what they forfeited. And that's a weight no soul carries lightly. They thought they could take from your energy and remain unchanged. But what they didn't realize is that your energy is encoded with purpose. When they tried to manipulate you, they activated a chain reaction. And now, the realm of spirit is correcting the imbalance. It's like a pendulum. Every action toward you swings back. If they gave love, they receive love multiplied. If they gave betrayal, they receive unrest. If they touched you with jealousy, they now wrestle with insecurity that no validation can quiet. And here's the part that many don't understand. You didn't curse them. You didn't wish harm. You simply stepped into your divine protection. You closed the door. You elevated. And when your energy withdrew, it took peace with it. That vacuum they feel, that ache they can't explain, that's the absence of your light. Even science tells us when a powerful field is removed, there is turbulence in its wake. And spiritually, that turbulence looks like sleepless nights, haunted thoughts, and spiritual agitation. Some of them feel like they're going crazy. They can't pinpoint why. Everything in their life looks the same, but nothing feels the same. That's the spiritual consequence of touching a chosen one with defiled intentions. What they did in secret is now echoing through the night, louder than their thoughts, louder than their prayers. But don't misunderstand, this isn't about you being some untouchable deity. You're human. You've made mistakes. You've hurt and been hurt. But what separates you is alignment. You've been walking in obedience, refining yourself through pain, letting go when God said let go. That refinement has charged your energy with something divine. And when they touched it without clean hands, they triggered a reaction they couldn't control. That's why the sleeplessness doesn't lift with time. Because time doesn't heal spiritual violation. Truth does. And until they come into truth, until they face themselves honestly and seek real repentance, they'll carry this unrest like a shadow, a spiritual weight, a consequence of dishonoring what was sent to heal them. They thought they were clever, that they could lie to you, take from you, discard you, and just move on. But God doesn't operate on their timeline. The justice of the divine may be slow, but it is certain. And in the stillness of the night, when their ego has no audience, that justice speaks. So sleep evades them, because the spirit does not forget what was done in the dark, and neither does the light. There's a sacred truth that doesn't get preached often enough. Chosen one. And it's this energy always returns, always. But here's the mystery most never consider. Energy doesn't return in the same form. It adapts to intention, to vibration, to alignment. What they sent out will come back to them, but not always as they expect. You see, when someone touched your energy with love, with sincerity, with spiritual respect, they felt uplifted. They felt peace. They slept well. Their lives often began to shift for the better. Not because you fixed them, but because your energy helped realign them to their own divine frequency. But when they touched you with falsehood, with manipulation, with jealousy masked as affection, that same energy became like a blade. Not because you turned it into one, but because spiritual law reflects What they sowed returned and magnified. And now it cuts into the illusions they tried to live behind. This is why they can't rest. The energy they tried to steal is now returning to them in a form they don't recognize. It doesn't feel like power or peace. It feels like pressure, disruption, night sweats, visions they can't explain. It's not retribution, it's realignment. The universe is bringing balance, and your energy, chosen one, was the catalyst. They tried to siphon your light, thinking it would empower them. But your light doesn't play favorites. It doesn't conform to ego. It operates on truth. So instead of power, it became exposure. Instead of inspiration, it became confrontation. The very energy they tried to wear is now chasing them in the dark. It's like someone borrowing a royal garment they didn't earn. At first, it feels majestic, grand. But over time, it begins to burn. Because their soul knows it doesn't fit. It wasn't tailored for them. They didn't endure what you did to carry it. And what was meant to elevate them instead becomes a weight too heavy to bear. That weight, that's why they can't sleep, even when they pretend everything's fine. Even when they post the highlight reels and smile in public. Deep down, their spirit is unraveling. Because spiritual misalignment feels like internal chaos. And no amount of external validation can silence a conscience in conflict. Some of them don't even know what's wrong. They go to doctors, therapists, healers, trying to solve a restlessness that has no name. But the diagnosis is spiritual. The sickness is karmic. They touched what was never theirs to hold, and now their soul is buckling under the weight of that violation. Let's bring it home. Chosen one, your energy is sovereign. It belongs to divine order. It carries the fingerprints of your pain, your growth, your obedience. That kind of energy cannot be copied. It cannot be stolen. And it certainly cannot be mishandled without spiritual consequence. When you were betrayed, lied to, used, it wasn't just personal, it was spiritual theft. And spiritual theft triggers spiritual warfare, but not for you. For them. Because you, chosen one, are protected, covered, watched over by forces they can't comprehend. The attacks they launched against you didn't land, they boomeranged. The gossip they spread didn't ruin you, it exposed them. The energy they tried to steal didn't empower them, it poisoned them. And now their dreams are haunted, not because you hex them, not because you wish them ill, but because they violated a covenant. You were sent into their life as a blessing, and they treated you like a burden. You were a mirror, and they tried to shatter you. But the divine doesn't let mirrors break without revealing what they were reflecting first. So now, in the silence of their night, they remember. They see flashes of your face, hear your voice in the quiet, feel your absence like a wound they can't bandage. That's the energy coming home, but not gently, because it wasn't given gently. That's how the return works. It's like water. When you pour it into a clean vessel, it nourishes. But when poured into a cracked, dirty cup, it turns foul, and the one who drinks from it becomes sick. This is the fate of those who tried to drink from your well without reverence. They poisoned themselves, and now their body, mind, and spirit are responding. It's not your job to fix them. It's not your responsibility to explain, to warn, or to soften the blow. That was never your assignment. Your assignment was to shine, to love with discernment, to reflect truth, and when the time came, to walk away in peace. So let them wrestle. Let the energy do its work, because eventually they will come to understand what they touched. And whether they find redemption or ruin is no longer in your hands. It never really was. The divine is handling it. Justice is unfolding. And the sleeplessness is just the beginning of their awakening. Meanwhile, you are being elevated. As their sleep grows more restless, your dreams are becoming clearer. As they spiral, you are rising. Because energy never dies. Chosen one. It simply returns to its rightful place. And yours is a throne they were never meant to sit on. They didn't just touch your energy. Chosen one, they trespassed sacred territory. And they had no idea what that meant. Because to the untrained eye, you might look like just another person, soft-spoken, kind-hearted, maybe even underestimated. But spiritually, you are marked. You are sealed. You are claimed by the Most High. And anything that belongs to God carries divine consequences when mishandled. You are not ordinary. You never have been. That's why people feel something when you walk into the room, even if they don't understand it. That's why strangers are drawn to you, why others become strangely defensive or hostile for no clear reason. You disturb frequencies that aren't aligned. You agitate spirits that were never meant to be near yours. And for those who crossed that line with impure intentions, those who lied to you, played with your heart, tried to manipulate your trust, and they weren't just dealing with you. They were interfering with divine property. Think about that. Your life, your spirit, your energy, it's been set apart, sanctified. It is not to be touched without reverence. Remember the story of Uzzah in the Old Testament. He reached out to steady the Ark of the Covenant when it began to fall, and he was struck down immediately. Harsh, maybe to some. But the message was clear. You don't touch what is holy without spiritual clearance. You don't lay hands on what is consecrated just because you think it needs your control. That's what they did to you. Chosen one. They reached out not to honor, but to manipulate. Not to understand, but to manage. They thought your spirit was something to tame. They thought your kindness was weakness. They thought your calling was a costume. And now they're wide awake at night, sitting in the fallout of that violation, wondering why peace has left them. Because spiritual trespassing has a cost. When someone touches what belongs to the divine, the consequences aren't always immediate, but they are inevitable. And the first place it shows up in their spirit, in their sleep, in the stillness. It's not just that they regret hurting you. It's that their soul is trembling under the weight of what they've done. And that trembling doesn't stop at nightfall. They might try to silence it with distractions, with noise, with substance. But none of it works. Because their nervous system is now attuned to guilt. Their thoughts rewired by regret. Their sleep cycles invaded by what they cannot bury. And chosen one, you need to understand this isn't your fault. You didn't ask to be sacred ground. You didn't choose the oil on your life, it chose you. But now that you carry it, the rules are different. People don't get to come into your space, drain you, lie to you, discard you, and walk away unchanged. You're a divine encounter, not an emotional pit stop. You were sent into their life as a mirror, as a test, as a divine opportunity. And they failed, not because you weren't enough, but because they weren't willing to face themselves. You carried peace. You carried healing. You carried clarity. But instead of receiving those gifts, they treated you like a possession, and now they're haunted, not by ghosts, but by truth. Truth that rises in the middle of the night and speaks louder than any voice they've tried to drown it out with. Truth that shakes their sleep, disrupts their breath, and forces their conscience to play back every moment they thought would stay buried. Truth that whispers. You touched what you didn't understand. You didn't curse them. You didn't wish them harm. But the spirit within you is not silent. It speaks in absence. It speaks in dreams. It speaks in the sound of their own restlessness. Because the divine is not mocked. What was done to you has been recorded, and the response is sacred, swift, and sure. And don't think for a moment they don't feel it. Even if they never speak a word. Even if their pride won't allow them to admit it. They know. They feel the loss of your energy, the warmth you carried, the protection that surrounded them when they were in your presence, and they now live in a cold they can't shake. That's the cost of mishandling what God anointed. You are the hedge they didn't recognize, the covering they took for granted, the spiritual force they didn't see until it was gone. And now, their sleep is where the reckoning begins. It's where the truth catches up with them. Quietly. Relentlessly. Not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. Because some lessons must be learned in the dark. You were never meant to avenge yourself. Chosen one. You were meant to rise, to heal, to elevate beyond their understanding. And in your rising, your energy does what you no longer need to say. It speaks in dreams. It whispers in their silence. It moves through their nights like a force they can't name, but can't escape. That's the spiritual justice of the Most High. You don't have to fight. You don't even have to explain. Because when they touched what was sacred with defiled hands, they invited a battle they weren't equipped for. And now, sleep has left them, because your energy never forgets. So now we arrive at the part that most people won't understand. Chosen one, not unless they've walked in your shoes, cried your tears, carried your silence. This final truth isn't about vengeance. It's not about proving a point or taking some dark satisfaction in their torment. It's about divine order. You didn't come into their lives to destroy them. You came carrying the frequency of both judgment and mercy. Let that sink in. You, chosen one, are a living embodiment of divine balance. You carry the sword and the salve. Your energy has the power to convict and the power to heal. But here's the key: your frequency responds to alignment. If someone approaches you with humility, truth, and openness, what they receive from your presence is peace, restoration, and elevation. But if they come with deception, control, or ego, what they experience is exposure, resistance, collapse. It's not because you punish them. It's because your presence enforces spiritual truth. They thought they were just dealing with a person. What they didn't realize is that they were dealing with an instrument of the divine. And when they violated that, when they misused your trust, touched your energy without clean motives, tried to manipulate what was sent to heal them, they activated the justice side of your calling. Chosen one, you are the reminder. Not everyone is meant to be comfort. Some of us were sent to be a mirror. Some of us were sent to disrupt systems of dysfunction. Some of us were sent not just to speak light, but to be it. and light reveals what the dark tried to hide. You weren't sent to make everyone feel comfortable. You were sent to activate truth. And that's exactly what you did. That's why their sleep is haunted. Not because you did anything wrong, but because their soul knows it mishandled a sacred opportunity. You didn't come to play games. You didn't come to be worshipped or used. You came to be a vessel. And when they tried to contain that light for selfish gain, the spirit realm responded in kind. And now, there is no rest for them, not until they reckon with what they've done. This is the part that's hardest to explain to people who haven't lived this. The weight of being misunderstood. The cost of being spiritually potent. The loneliness that comes from being a walking reminder of what others try so hard to avoid. But chosen one, hear me, none of it is in vain. Your energy is doing its job. Your silence is speaking louder than a confrontation ever could. Your elevation is confirmation. And the sleeplessness they feel, that's divine accountability playing out in real time. Because this walk isn't about revenge. It's about revelation. You are the living proof that the divine is watching. That spiritual boundaries exist. That not everyone can be played with. That some people carry the presence of the holy, and touching them carelessly brings consequences. And now that they've learned, maybe, just maybe, they'll start treating light with the reverence it deserves. You don't need to watch their downfall. You don't need to wait for their apology. You don't need to hope they lose sleep. The truth is, they already are. And more than that, their spirit is wrestling with itself. They can't unmeet you. They can't unfeel what your presence stirred inside of them. They can't forget the way your energy made them feel exposed, seen, understood, and uncomfortably real. And that memory will either break them or transform them. But that choice, it's not yours to make. You've done your part. You showed up in love. You offered healing. You carried light. You walked away in peace. And now, all that remains is truth. Let it speak. Let it echo. Let it correct. Because no one touches what is sacred without it leaving a mark. And chosen ones, you are sacred. You always have been. You always will be. And now, the world and the spirit realm is learning that truth in full. Now breathe. Chosen one. Let this be your confirmation. You didn't imagine the weight. You didn't overreact. You didn't misread the energy. What you felt was real. What you sensed in the spirit was truth. Your discernment has always been sharp, even when people tried to make you doubt it. And now, heaven is confirming what your soul already knew. You are covered. You are protected. You are consecrated. The sleeplessness they feel, it's not your burden. It's the sound of spiritual order making itself known. You don't have to chase validation. You don't have to defend your heart. The divine is your advocate. The Most High sees all. And your silence, that was your loudest testimony. Rest now in this truth. Your energy has returned to you. Stronger, brighter, refined by betrayal, fortified by fire. The very thing they tried to take is now overflowing. And no one can stop what's being poured back into your life. Walk with your head held high. You are not bitter. You are wiser. You are not broken. You are rising. You are not alone. The angels surround you. The Spirit goes before you. And the next time someone tries to touch your energy, they will think twice, because even the night cannot contain the justice that follows you. If this word confirmed what your spirit already knew, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let this message find another soul who needs it. Let the light continue to spread. And as always, chosen one, God bless you.